direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central, and here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another episode of Foxborough Central. I am Bob Hickey. I am your host. Thanking you for taking a little bit of time to join with me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. And one of the hidden gems, at least in my opinion, is a facility we have here in town. It's a home for those who are senior amongst us, our neighbors and friends. I'm talking, of course, about the Doolittle Home, a nonprofit organization located at the corner of Bird and Baker, which has been in our community now for almost 100 years. And joining me today are my new and old friends, Linda Hunter. Linda, thank you so much for being with us today. And Jack AUTHELET. Jack, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to join with us today. And we're talking about the Doolittle. And part of the joy that we're going to talk about today is the significant milestone that we're hitting with the Doolittle Home, the 100th anniversary, correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. And there's milestones of all sorts. Not only is it the 100th anniversary of the Doolittle, but it's also you're in the midst of your first year running the Doolittle, are you not?
Correct.
And so why don't we do just a quick hi, how are you, and who are you?
Who am I? That's a very good question.
Well, we know who you are, Linda. You are the director of the Doolittle Home, but you're also a local girl.
Yes.
And it's sort of a coming back career-wise, and now it's all touching back to local.
Yes. I came back in, the month of June and met with Deanna and the board and decided to come back. Mm-hmm. Went through a very vigorous interview process, and I thought to myself, how can they not like me? I've been here for many years growing up, so yeah, I worked.
Apparently they did like you, and
Yes.
Of course Deanna Wells, who's a longtime director of the Doolittle, who stepped down recently, still very much involved, a member of the board of directors.
Yes.
So it's all still together, and you're now picking up the mantle.
Deanna actually was one of those individuals when I was young that I looked up to and wanted to be like, so I guess the Doolittle inspired my career.
Well, there you go. And your career is in nursing?
Nursing home administration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to apply, and I suppose that it's working out well. Are you having a good time there?
Yes.
Are they enjoying you?
I hope so. I don't think they've got to know me quite yet because I haven't been there long enough.
Wow.
I've had a lot to do since I arrived.
Well, we'll touch on that in just a minute. But of course, any opportunity you have to talk about the future and some of the good things that are going to happen, you can't really have that conversation without putting it in the context of the past. And so I'm always thrilled to have our town historian, good neighbor and better friend, Jack AUTHELET, who also has been involved with the Doolittle Home over the years, and short story long, and I'm sure you probably don't know this, but my daughter used to come out and help with the annual tea with Jack's lovely wife, Marge, and she would do a lot of work with that, and my daughter would come out. So Katie, a little shout out to you for going out and doing that. So Jack, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the history of the Doolittle Home and its standing in our community.
Well, it's a bit of a challenge to bring 100 years down to a few words, or even a few hours. But
well, it's a challenge for me to bring a few words within a few hours.
But for me, I have to smile because I was born and brought up next door. And some years ago, returned there from our home on South Street. So Doolittle has been part of my whole life, one way or the other. My mother was cook over there for many years. My dad was a handyman, and so I view it from many, many different perspectives. But historically, it goes back to primarily to the Doolittle family. Alan was a foundry worker when new businesses started to evolve up in the center of town, all the straw hat shops and everything. They moved up and eventually built a home on Bird Street. At that time, it was remarkable because the home was more the stature of what one of the mill owners might have built. It was a magnificent structure for just a man, a wife, and his daughter. And it was a very, very large home with a barn, a lot of animals, orchards, a very busy place. But because of its strategic location, the Inman Kimball straw hat factory was right next door, eventually. Over the railroad tracks was the Caton Brothers straw hat shop. And down on Wall Street was the Union Straw Works. So straw shop workers were everywhere. And Mr. Doolittle took several of them in as boarders, which many people did. Your house had a boarder. He ran the hardware store, the people that live where you do. So anybody with a spare room, I mean, you know, you're not going to pass up this opportunity.
Sure.
So the Doolittle family settled in. They had the boarders. Everything was going very, very well. Mr. Doolittle was very successful in the straw hat business. But very suddenly, his wife passed away in 1900. The family made its adjustments. But then in 1907, Mr. Doolittle himself was killed in a fall in the home.
Ooh.
So this left poor Sarah all alone with this massive property, the barn, the animals, the orchards, all of these things. She tried desperately to get somebody to manage the boarders in the home. That didn't work out, so she began to contemplate sale. In 1913, she attended a meeting of the Universalist Convention. And the primary theme that year was to find a way to provide adequate care for the elderly. Now, I hang on that word adequate. It's very subjective.
Right.
I mean, we could get three different impressions of what adequate represented, but I hang on that word. So Sarah heard this appeal, gave it some thought. Dr. Conklin was the minister of a large Universalist church in Brookline, but he was also head of the Universalist Society in Foxborough. He knew Sarah, he knew the home, knew the family. She raised a prospect of perhaps Doolittle Home becoming the place of adequate care. And she offered to donate.
So that's
the
how
home.
that came about.
So that's how it all came about. They took the offer. They provided Sarah with a lifetime annuity, and they started bringing in, made some adjustments in the home, obviously, for rooms. Started bringing people in to provide adequate care. But in their mind, they brought people in with the intention of providing all their needs for the rest of their life. Now, I think that takes adequate to the extreme.
Yes,
And,
that is a key piece of this also, because the Doolittle Home is not a nursing home in the traditional sense.
Exactly. So the concept was established right then and there with resident number one, that we're going to care for you no matter what happens, no matter what the challenge, you're ours. You have nothing else to worry about. They soon realized they had more people and more responsibilities than they had prepared for. So they had to start fundraising immediately.
Right.
But they had a universal appeal. Look at what we're doing. Look how we're providing. When they originally incorporated, they put into the document with preference given to persons of the Universalist faith. That was not a mandate. It was a preference, and there were exceptions. But essentially, that held for many, many years. So as time went on, they realized that they needed more facilities. So they had this beautiful home.
And by the way, that home still stands, and that is still the main structure is what you see, and it's what fronts Baker Street on the corner of Bird with the beautiful farmer's porch, and that is the home. So if you take that step back and you go back to the picture painted by you, Jack, what a large place for just one girl to be living in. So it does make sense that she sought an alternative, and the Universalist Church that you're speaking of, the main the main congregation out of Brookline, but the one that we're talking about is just a few doors up on the other side of the current Boyden Library. So the proximity to the house also probably played a bit of a role.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was an ideal situation. And of course, Sarah went on to become a Sunday school teacher at the Universalist Church.
Okay.
And a librarian for the town of Foxborough. But the library at that time was all the way over the other side of the common.
Well, it was a long
Not
walk, I'm
across the
sure,
street.
during the blizzards, but
But they realized they needed more facility. So they demolished the barn, which did house a nursing unit but demolished the barn, built a mirror image of that big building on Burt Street, and then connected it with a 3-story link between the two structures. On the first floor, a beautiful sunroom and a dining room that is exactly standing there today as it was built. And downstairs, a large kitchen, food preparation and storage area. On the 3rd floor, storage, few spare rooms. All of that opened in 1932, so that was 82 years ago. Unfortunately, Sarah did not get to see that.
Oh.
She passed away a few years earlier. But clearly, her presence was there.
and her legacy continues today with
Absolutely.
that beautiful facility.
And even in her death, in her will, money to the home, to some clergy, to some cousins, a couple of hundred to the Foxborough Historical Society. But this more than tripled the capacity of Doolittle Home. And it had a nursing unit more appropriate than the one that originally existed in the barn. However, over time, that still wasn't enough. But amazingly, all of the people that had kept coming in over all these years were receiving total life care.
And I think that's the thing that strikes when one thinks about where are you going to be later in life and how do you plan. The Doolittle home makes it it's overly simplistic to say, just so easy to say, well, here I am and I'm happy to know, at least my family and I are happy to know that I have a place. I'm not going to be dismissed because of medical reasons, or I'm not going to be dismissed because at some point I'm not going to have an ability to pay maybe my Medicare or whatever goes down. So that's really a nice, unique, heartening piece of knowledge to know that my loved one is safe and cared for, correct?
Correct.
And before we talk to Linda Hunter, who's the director of the Doolittle home, I'd like to follow up. We talk about history, but history is not something in the past. The history is more of a continuous thread, something you've taught me. And in your role as a neighbor, and I'm a neighbor also, you also served on the board of directors. And during your time, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have a script when I go on this program, so this is all real conversation. Improvements were made to the medical wing, and there was an elevator installation. And so the facility is very modern. And there has been clear guidance and support from local board members and local people because Deanna being such a long time, Deanna Willis, the former executive director, had been such a guiding force there over the years, but there's so many people, neighbors, friends. My wife, in fact, is a member of the board of directors of the Doolittle home, full disclosure. And so, the history piece of it is more of a history of Foxborough as opposed to just of a nursing home, because it's not really what it is.
Right. But it is interesting that as all of this evolved, there was that constant of commitment to service. Families knew this was the last decision they would have to make for their loved one. Mm-hmm. I think people had a great fear of, well, you go here, but your health changes, and you go there. This one stop. And
that's amazing.
And at a level that respects the individual. We see the individual as a person. But one thing about Doolittle, it was always locally owned and managed. They weren't responsible to a board of trustees of some big corporation that had 15 such facilities around New England. One place, one board of trustees, one group of people who could look their clients right in the eye, share meals with them, share events, Christmas carol sings, and all of these things. The best thing about the Christmas carol sing, we did it at 4:30 in the afternoon. So, but it was that type of thing. And Doolittle was able to make what we call decisions of the heart. In other words, if somebody's hospitalized and then they say, well, they should go to rehab for this and this and this. If that rehab was something that Doolittle could provide with its own specialists under contract, bring them back where somebody knows how they like their tea in the morning and how they want their bread buttered, this type of thing. They're going to heal a lot faster.
Yes.
And that was the type of thing that Doolittle could do. When Marge and I moved back uptown, we're doing a lot of work on the house, and 2 faces in every window at Doolittle all day, every day. They couldn't get enough. They're watching everything. So I said, gee, when we get all done, we should really invite them over for tea. But I knew they weren't the styrofoam cup crowd. We got out the fancy china, brought them over. We had a grand time. And as they left, they said, boy, this was so enjoyable. We can't wait until next year. And we really hadn't given any thought to anything other than this open house.
So that's where that started.
So for the next 17 years, we had an annual open house. And our granddaughter would help. And when she outgrew it, HICKEY would come down and help, and others. And it was just such a warm relationship. And one of the ladies, in appreciation after that first open house, she made us, with her own hands, a beautiful wreath. And every year when we hang that back up, we think of her and recall those happy days. But the care of elderly changed. You have state law, you have this, you have that. Doolittle was at the leading edge of that all those years. Now, they had one major change. You're constantly dealing with those things that you can control, those things forced on you by the state that you can't control, and it's a fact of life. But the time came when donations from religious sources had died off with the demise of many of the Universalist churches. They formed the UUA, but the fundraising just wasn't the same. Sure. The IRS stepped in that religious donations were not a sufficient percentage of expenses. Therefore, there was no more religious exemption for Doolittle. So they had to reorganize as a public charity, 501c3. Maybe to the average person that would make a difference, but administratively,
sure,
we had to totally rebuild the fundraising appeals.
Well, because you're essentially changing your entire structure of how you operate, even though the facility, because with any organization, we put things on camera, but there's so much more that goes into the show than just what we're doing here. Right. And the same thing, I'm sure, with the facility. You've got the business side of it, which of course is where your leadership comes in today. And then from the board of directors standpoint is how do you adjust to new tax law, to new health regulations, to new ways that we do things.
But what do you do when you need a totally new source of income? The smartest thing we did was turn to Foxborough Cable Access. And we started the auction.
We love that auction.
Which has to be, without question, the single most labor-intensive fundraiser that anyone had ever conceived. But it did wonders for us because, number one, to me, it wasn't as much the money we raised as it was the opportunity to tell our story
Sure.
to a broader audience in a different way, up close and personal. And the dollars rolled in. That became the single largest fundraiser in the history of the home up to that point in time.
Really?
Also,
We were happy to be part of it then.
and I was very blessed that my childhood friend Charlie McAllister, a financial specialist, agreed to come on the board. We wrote out a new series of formulas and got the home strengthened financially. My daughter Lynn was on the board at the time. We did a new marketing program, whole new mailing list, whole new outreach. It's hard looking back right now. We did it piece by piece by piece. The enormity of it all boggles the mind. If we ever realized what the full scope would be, we couldn't have done it.
Well, I think also,
But
as with any
it's
good
it.
project, we try not to think about all the work.
Right.
We go with the idea, and then everything builds organically. And then as we get to the end, it's like, wow, we did that.
But in the midst of all of this, it was one family, one elderly member of that family, one commitment from Doolittle Home. We will take care of this person, regardless of whatever changes there are in health, in finance, family conditions, whatever. So the family had that assurance. They had made the last decision they had to.
And that's the commitment that continues today.
Absolutely.
Through 2015 and the 100th anniversary. And you had mentioned the fundraiser, and we're going to segue to current day. But with that fundraiser, the Doolittle Home Auction, everything has to be continuously relooked at and kept fresh. And there was a fundraiser last year, I believe, that was put together by your wonderful public relations person. What was her name again?
Virginia Lear.
Virginia Lear. She's a really nice person, isn't she?
She is.
She's an asset to the organization, in my opinion.
Correct.
And what she does is she tries to put forth a good message, including you have a very robust website, and I'll put the graphic on the screen. I'm sure you can see it right now, that the Doolittle Home can be contacted by that graphic, but they can also contact you, Linda Hunter, the director, directly by calling
543-2131.
2131. And the important thing about that is that you are always accessible. And long story short again too, I would used to walk up to the deli and get up my newspaper every morning on my walks with the dog when I had a dog, and the nurse would occasionally stick her head out the window. Loved your column. Hi, how you doing? So it is all very local, and people know each other, and people know the neighbors, and we are neighbors. And so you are a local girl. You are a Marsh girl, if I'm not incorrect. And so you grew up here, and how did you mentioned at the beginning of the program about your connection with the Anna Willis and the Doolittle Home. What was that?
Well, through high school, I graduated in 1987, so that dates myself a little. But my mother was the director.
And
so when my mother
spent time there.
Yeah. So when my mother needed some extra hands during a snowstorm, when there was a snow day, she would require me to get out of bed, which I thought it was going to be a nice day off, and go up and shovel the ramps up at the Doolittle, or the stairways, or just the exits for emergency reasons, which I never understood why at that point in my life, but now I do. And so I started out in housekeeping and actually learned how to iron at the Doolittle. I had a nice resident who shared with me that I didn't iron correctly, and taught me, actually, showed me the steps on how to do that.
I hear that the folks at the Doolittle, and if you're watching now, this is props to you, are very shy and reserved, would never ever suggest that.
Maybe. But I progressed. I moved up into the dining department.
You passed ironing and you
I
moved up
passed
to dining. Okay.
And learned more about what the meal process was like. And it used to actually be served family style, so it was a little easier than it is now, which everything is plated like you are in a restaurant. And I originally wanted to follow my father's footsteps, but when I worked up at the Doolittle, which
Your father, Bill Marsh,
who
local leader?
Local leader involved in JC's and the Lions. I thought I'd be a nurse because I really admired the nurses at the Doolittle home. I thought they were very caring and always appreciated the residents. So I went in the direction at my mother's guidance to be a CNA, and realized one night working 11 to 7 that I would not be a CNA very much longer, and I would not be a nurse for very much longer because it's really hard work. So I decided then, with my mother's guidance again, to go more in the eyes or the direction of administration.
Okay.
So that's when I changed my major at Stonehill College and decided to go that way.
And then upon graduation, you took a number of progressively responsible jobs.
Well, yes, I did. It was very hard getting started because once you get your nursing home administrator's license, you need to actually know how to run a nursing home to get a job. But to really learn how to run a nursing home, you have to actually have a job to experience it. So really getting started is quite tough.
The catch-22.
The catch-22. So I was very lucky to be able to start as an assistant administrator at one of the big for-profit chains, and did a lot of growing up, and then worked for a majority of years at a CCRC, which was about life care in Needham. And that's really where I remembered what the Doolittle was about and why I enjoyed it so much. And so from there, just experiencing the industry and the challenges of the regulations and the people dynamics that you deal with on a regular basis, it all started to come together as to why I needed to wear that hairnet in the kitchen that I never wanted to wear, or why you had to wash your hands so much, even to the point that they were sore at the end of the day, or why you couldn't do, certain things for cross-contamination. It all started to come together. So coming back now, it's amazing to think that, I really thought I understood the Doolittle, but now I'm looking at it from a whole new perspective.
Sure. And then with that, you're bringing in, obviously, a wealth of experience and really continuing a chapter then and continuing the story of the Doolittle home as a total care facility. So once folks go in, they're guaranteed life care.
We have many. We have 3 different ways you can come into the building. One's through the life care program, which we still honor and truly is an extremely wonderful benefit. There's another where it's a residency program where you can pay month to month, and then there's a respite program that you can come in. So we don't have Medicare or Medicaid as a license. So you come in pretty much private pay. In the life care component, you can just see the families when they sign in, the family relaxes and smiles, and the resident is, I think, getting used to a new environment, which is always a little difficult, but then once they fit in, they really enjoy the new setting and what the home really offers, which it's very unique in the industry. It's not like any other environment I've ever seen.
It is definitely not an institutional type setting.
Correct.
Having been in the home myself, Christmas carols singing with the JCs and doing random volunteer work. It is a beautiful facility inside and out, historic in nature, functional and modern where it needs to be. And the rooms are beautifully kept with essentially furniture. And I was in the home a while ago doing a tour, and Deanna Willis was proudly showing all of the historic photographs that had come in through the years and are put up in rotation to keep things fresh and interesting. And I just find it to be such a homey touch to make it absolutely not a sterile facility, but more of a home. So pretty nice.
Exactly. It's very much a home.
So,
But this adequate care,
Right. we don't do that anymore.
now the state has standards, and they measure compliance. And in every single annual state evaluation, Doolittle ranks at least in a few categories each year as number 1 in the state.
which is quite an accomplishment.
And sometimes you're number 2, or you might share an award with, a rating with somebody. But the point is, consistently, every single year, you're up there in the very, very highest echelons. So to me, that always meant that they weren't meeting a standard. they were setting it.
They were setting it.
And
It's a great way of putting it.
That's the difference. And when you talk about respite care, now consider the family caring for a loved one at home. Now look, that's
And until you
that's
go
24/7.
through it, I was going to say, until you go through it, it's something that you really can't appreciate. But most of us have had opportunity, or will soon have opportunity, to care for a loved one, either in a medical situation or an elderly situation. And there's so many challenges that really bring it home to why the need for this type of a respite facility. And I didn't know this is definitely the direction we're going in today, but I love having the opportunity to talk about it. So let's talk a little bit about respite and what the Doolittle can do there.
Well, I mean, essentially, if this family caring for this family member wants to get away for a week or two, Doolittle's your answer.
It's essentially...
They could come there, they're going to get all the care. And I think, too, this is adequate. When you receive that kind of care, you are taking all the meds you're supposed to. You are not taking ones that you have improvised on your own. Somebody notices if you're losing weight or not eating properly, or all of these things. And yet, it's such a human relationship. I remember sitting by the door one night waiting for people to come in for a meeting. And I saw this resident come up from the nursing unit. She was positively beaming. And I said, "Okay, Marge, what have you been up to?" And she held up her hands and said, "The nurse had time to do my nails."
Ah,
And she was the happiest woman that you could ever imagine.
that's great. That's a great
And
story.
to me, to have somebody in a facility like that means a lot.
That's great. And so that brings us to 2015. I'm talking with Jack AUTHELET, our town historian, and Linda Hunter, who's the executive director of the Doolittle Home. And we're here to celebrate the 2015 marking of the 100th year anniversary, the centennial of the Doolittle Home as a nursing facility, as a home. What do we call the Doolittle, actually? Do we call it a nursing facility? Do we call it a life care residential place?
Technically, it is licensed by the state as a rest home.
Okay.
But for us, I think we, who are employed there,
It's
just
a
call it a home.
It's a home. That's what we're going to do then. So, Linda, the Doolittle Home, what are some of the things on tap for our centennial celebration?
Well, some of the things that we're still planning on, I know that we want to focus on a variety of different things that make the home what it is. We are looking at doing something for our employees, even maybe featuring one in an article who's been there for over 30 years. Which is
The local Foxborough Reporter.
in the local Foxborough Reporter, yes. We're hoping this year to maybe participate a little bit more than we've done in the past with the Founders Day activities. We're hoping to have...
Which is a great way to get the message out, and also, again, part of that community thread. And you know, so many people get together as neighbors to do what they can to promote, but also to participate. And what more appropriate venue than a nonprofit organization, because Founders Day is really all about volunteerism and the volunteers that make Foxborough truly run. It's not some big corporate entity that makes the magic happen. It's just people like Jack and now you, Linda, and the volunteers here at Cable Access and everybody who gets together on Founders Day, which is also a nonprofit organization, and really make it a community celebration.
But also, the parade goes down Mechanic Street, across Railroad
Right by the
Avenue,
house.
and up Bird,
That's
so
right.
that the residents of Doolittle Home can see it.
Right from
That's
the
right.
beautiful
Yep.
porch out on the front.
Well, we'll cheer loudly this year when that happens.
Yes. We're also hoping to have music in the park, which is being provided by a grant I believe we received from the town of Foxborough.
Congratulations. Now, when you say the park, are we
Yes.
talking about a random park, or are we talking about the beautiful park in your backyard?
The beautiful park in our backyard.
I've long admired the beautiful park in your backyard. It has I don't know exactly, a gazebo, and it has walking paths, and it's nicely landscaped. It sits behind the facility going down towards the Railroad Avenue
Correct.
portion of the property. And tell us about that.
The park itself?
The park itself.
The park itself. Well, it has in the summertime we put up a tent so individuals can enjoy the shaded areas, but a lot of people like to go out for some fresh air. We have a beautiful gazebo that a lot of people take advantage of, but just to stroll through the park and look at the flowers and smell the fresh air, I think just says itself what it means.
Still not a typical nursing home then.
Not a typical
Not
nursing
a typical nursing home. That's
Also, it's a great place for young people to interact with the elderly because it's such a home setting. So you have many nursery schools, scout troops, people like that coming into Doolittle Home and really interacting one-on-one on special occasions. And it's such a great experience for the young people, and of course it delights the residents.
Oh, and the residents love when there's visitors. Just, I mean, even when young kids come in for Halloween in their costumes, or, you know, when we have local kids from the schools come in and do projects, it just, the residents want to assist because most of the residents are, you know, just gifted in their own right individually to be able to share what they're, you know, proud of and what they've accomplished in their life with someone who's interested. To them is very special.
fantastic. And then so in addition to the park, and I also understand that people want to do weddings in your park, or?
Oh, when a lot of brides will come and take pictures out in the gazebo, which they pick a very pretty place.
Well, beautiful then.
Yeah.
So we have a park, but what else do we have on tap for 2015?
We're hoping to do many things with local community organizers. We're hoping to do something with the Historical Society, maybe to show some of the historical artifacts of the town.
It is rich in history in there, and I've seen the attic, and there is so much up there as far as furniture and physical
Yes.
things and pictures.
And antiques.
And antiques that each one, as you mentioned, each person that comes in has a story, has a life, has a gift that they've developed. And so each story, there's never enough time to delve into them, but maybe 2015 will be an opportunity to focus.
We're hoping to do a golf tournament, but that is quite a big event. We're not sure if we're going to be able to pull that all together,
Well,
but we're
people
hoping.
should stay tuned to the Doolittle Home website, and I'm sure there'll be updates there.
Yes.
As well as if folks want to visit, check it out, come learn more, they can always contact you, Linda Hunter,
Correct.
at 543
2131.
21. I'm going to write it down. 21. You should write it down too. 2131. And the Doolittle Home is located at the corner of Baker and Bird Streets here in beautiful Foxborough, Massachusetts. Are there any last words or last things you would like to tell us? Because I know that you're wonderful and extremely talented. Public relations person Virginia Lara is going to tell me after this program what I should have asked you. What should she ask me to ask you before we go?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm going to give you a second to think about that. Papa Jack, is there anything that you can share at the end?
I would say that many, many people over these 100 years have devoted countless hours and energy toward sustaining that adequate care. And they have built so strong that you're going to start into the second 100 years, full speed ahead.
Yes,
Very nice.
that is our goal.
That is the goal, and that is the message.
Well, I suggest people come and see us. A lot of people in the town of Foxborough don't even know what the Doolittle Home is. And often, once they do, they're pleasantly surprised and they want to be more involved in some way. So I would suggest coming to an open house when we have them, or even stopping by for a visit, just to see what we're about, because we're really an integral part of the community.
Indeed, and another nice thing about having a local community newspaper, the Foxborough Reporter, is that we can learn all about it when it happens. So we'll be looking forward to that invitation appearing, or on our community bulletin board here at Foxborough Cable Access. Linda Hunter, it's been so nice having you
Same
as
here.
our guest. Jack AUTHELET, thank you for taking the time to come out, and thank you folks as well for taking the time to sit with me as we learned about the Doolittle Home, their centennial celebration, and all the really cool things that are going to be happening in 2015 and beyond. On behalf of all the Foxborough Cable Access volunteers who work hard to bring this show to you, Betty Travers, Deb Storrs behind the camera, Gary Nash and Paul Beck behind the glass, our executive director, Michael Weber, my editor, Jillian Larson, and Lauren Batara, who allows me the space to get this show to you. I'm Bob Hickey, your host, thanking you and hoping you have a wonderful day. Take care, Foxborough.